Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for this occasion, and this time we're gonna present about the unit testing tools. But before that, let me introduce our member of group. The first member is Argadias Prawirayuda. Second is me, Eko Setio Yanarko. And then the third is Nabila Afrida Riadatulaisi. In this time, we will explain the first is about the software testing. Then the second is about the unit testing. The third is what kind of unit testing tools. And then the fourth is go to the practice demo how to use unit testing tools. First is software testing. Software testing is an investigative process carried out to obtain information about the quality of a product or service being tested, or more specifically, software testing is a process of executing a program to find bugs, error, or other defects of software. Software testing can be divided into two, namely black box testing and white box testing. White box testing is a testing an application with reference to the internal structure of the software component is called white box testing. Procedure to derive and or select test case based on analysis of the internal structure of a component or system. And then black box is the testing approach that is used to test the functionality of the IoT based on the specification of requirement system software without any knowledge of the technology used to implement the application under the test. But in this time we are focused on the white box because the unit testing is the part of the white box testing. Unit testing is a type of software testing where individual units or components of software are tested. The purpose is to validate that each unit of the software could perform as expected. Unit testing it is often the first type of testing done on an application. As a software developer, we can develop a few lines of code, a single function or an object, and test it to make sure it works before continuing unit testing to identify a majority of bugs. Early in the software development lifecycle, bugs identified in this stage are cheaper and easy to fix. That's why because the unit testing called is the part of the white box testing. And then the third is the unit testing tools will presented by Nabil Afrika. Please Nabil Afrida.
So these are the unit testing tools. There are many kinds, but I take 5 examples of unit testing tools such as JUnit, NUnit, PHP unit, Mockito, and TestNG. First is JUnit. JUnit is open source unit testing framework which was written in Java programming language, mainly used in the development of the test-driven environment. Offer the annotation, which help us to find the test method, and it's over the assertion for testing expected result. Second is NUnit. It is open source tool and widely used unit testing framework for all .NET language. Support data-driven tests which can run in parallel. Allow assertion as a static method of the asset class and use a console runner to load and execute the test. The third one is PHP unit. another unit testing tool which was written in PHP programming language. PHP unit will provide the logging and code coverage analysis. It takes small portion of the code which is called units and tests each of them separately. Uses assertion validate the performance of the specific component. The fourth is Mockito. This is the open source unit testing framework which was written in Java programming language. It will be used to support exception. With the help of the annotation feature, we can product the mocks. We don't need to write the mocks object on our own. Is Mockito. Last one is TestNG. TestNG is open source tool which support Java and .NET programming language. It provides a flexible test configuration, support various instances of the same test cases, parameterized annotation, data driver, functional integration, and unit testing. Support by multiple plugins and tools such as IDEA, Eclipse, Maven, and so on. Is demo, and this will be presented by Argadias.
Okay, I will give you some demonstration of how to perform webhooks testing on NetBeans project. In this case, I use program from network programming course, which is called IP calculator. As you can see on the first page, it used to calculate the IP address based on CIDR or classless interdomain routing. And then the second page will be used to guess the IP address class, and then the last page will be validate the URL. So for example, in this URL validation, polynema.ac.id, so it will try to connect to the internet with this URL. As you can see, the connection is success by return the IP address. Okay, and then we go to the inside of the programs. So I have several methods in this program. That is IP format. It will return Boolean value, and then is URL format. It also return Boolean value, and IP splitter. It will split the IP address into integer value. So it will return integer array. Then IP binary string. It will calculate the IP blocks into a binary value, and then it will return string array. And then subnet, it will calculate the subnet based on the CIDR. It will return string value, and then hostname, it will return integer value. Host value, it will return string array. Class type, it will return string. And then the last methods, it will return a net address object. And then we go to the operation test class. So as my crewmate explained before, that we use the test using JUnit. JUnit itself is a library on Java to test the functional of the methods. And then the important things in this library is annotation. So for example, the first methods here, it has a test annotation. So the annotation itself used to arrange the which methods it will execute it first or executed after. There is another annotation like before and after. So in before annotation, it will execute it before the test annotation, and then the after annotation will execute it after the test annotation. So we don't use it in this demonstration. So we only use this annotation to execute the test methods. So on this blocks, I have a test IP format that it will test the methods of each IP format that it will return the Boolean value. So this assert true is the expected return value. So in this is IP format, I insert the right IP address format. So as I expected, it will return true value. And then in this false expectation, I will insert the false format like this. I insert alphabet P inside the IP address. So let's try to run first. So if the expected value and the actual value is matched, it will show success and then the test based 100% if the all of the methods is pass the test. So we go to the second example of the test. So I have this method called test URL format. So inside these methods, I have three kind of methods that I will test. So this will the true expectation, and the second will be true expectation, and then the false expectation. So as we tried before, I insert the true value here, the true URL here, and then this also the true URL, and then this is the false URL format. So and then we try to run the files. Okay, and it shows the operation test passed. And what if I change this to the false format? So as I said before, if the expected value and the actual value is matched, it will pass the test. So if the expected value and actual value is doesn't match, it will show failed test. Okay, try to run the file, and then as you can see, it will show the failed test here. One test failed with assertion failed error. So it doesn't match the expected value. Okay, we go to the next test. So actually there is a parameter inside the annotation. So in this parameter, as you can see, it says timeout that represent the duration of the methods can run. So I will try this test connection speed methods that test the valid address of facebook.com. So like this. Okay, the test passed. So timeout will be fail if the method itself run more than this defined timeout duration. So it represents 1 second or 1000 millisecond. And if we try to make it short, like 50, it's so fast. So what if I try to run this? The test failed because the, 50 milliseconds that this method needs, it's too fast to run this methods. Okay, then go to the next example of test. And also there is some parameter called expected. So this expected will test whether the test method will catch some exception. So for example, this class type, on class type, if we doesn't define the parameter, it will return, I think, null value or exception because it will convert it into an array. Maybe this return it will catch exception value. So if we run the file, wait a second, I change this first. Okay, run the file again. Okay, the test passed, and as I expected, that this method, if I assign the parameter with a blank value, it will get some exception. So as I expected here, it will catch an exception. Okay, that's all from my demonstration of JUnit testing in NetBeans project.